Ethan Kane was the kind of man who built empires with nothing but ambition and ruthlessness. As the youngest self-made millionaire CEO in the city, his word was law, and his temper was legendary. But on one stormy night, when the woman he once loved stood before him, trembling, clutching her heart and whispering about a future he never wanted to hear, his anger boiled over. With a glare cold enough to freeze her soul, he pointed to the door and shouted the words that would echo for years, "Get out!" She left with tears streaming down her face, carrying a secret he would regret for the rest of his life. 6 years later, the world had changed. Cameras flashed as a black limousine pulled up to a gala, and when the door opened, Ethan's blood ran cold. She stepped out, glowing, powerful, and not alone. At her side was a child. With his eyes, Ethan Kane was a man who believed the world revolved around him. At 33, he was already a household name in business magazines. His company Kane Global dominating industries, from real estate to technology. Reporters described him as brilliant but merciless, a man who thrived on winning and crushing anyone who stood in his way. But behind the success and the headlines, Ethan was also deeply flawed. He didn't allow weakness, not in his boardroom, and certainly not in his personal life. 6 years ago, he had been in love, though he would never admit it out loud. Her name was Isabella Hart. She wasn't from his world of skyscrapers and billion-dollar deals. She was warm, kind, and carried dreams of her own. Their romance had been fast and passionate, a rare softness in Ethan's otherwise hardened life. For a while, Isabella believed she had found the man behind the armor, but the truth revealed itself one night. Isabella came to his penthouse late in the evening, her hands trembling as she clutched a small envelope. Her voice shook as she told him the words that would change their lives forever. "Ethan, I'm pregnant." At first, there was silence. Ethan stared at her as if she had spoken a foreign language. A child, in his world of meetings, mergers, and ruthless ambition. Impossible. Then came the anger. His eyes hardened, his jaw clenched, and his voice exploded like thunder. "Pregnant? You think I'll let you derail everything I've built? I don't have time for this." "Ethan, please," Isabella whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. "It's our child. We can figure this out together." But Ethan's pride drowned out reason. The thought of responsibility, of vulnerability, terrified him. He stepped forward, his voice cold and sharp. "Get out." The words cut her deeper than any blade. Isabella stood frozen for a moment, her heart breaking, before turning and walking away. Ethan didn't chase after her. He slammed the door, convincing himself it was for the best, that she would leave, and with her, the problem would disappear. But problems born of love don't disappear, they grow. For years, Ethan buried the memory. He poured himself into his empire, into deals that made him richer, harder, more untouchable. If regret ever crept in late at night, he silenced it with whiskey and ambition. To the world, he remained the unstoppable CEO, a man with no weaknesses. But fate has a way of bringing the past back. 6 years later, Ethan was preparing for the most important gala of his career. Kane Global was announcing a new international partnership, and the event was swarming with journalists, cameras, and billionaires. Ethan thrived in this environment, his confidence radiating as he posed for photos in his tailored tuxedo. Then the air shifted. Outside, a black limousine pulled up. Flashbulbs burst like fireworks as the crowd of reporters turned their cameras toward it. The door opened slowly, and when the first figure stepped out, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. Isabella, but she wasn't the trembling woman he remembered. She was transformed, elegant in a deep blue gown, her hair cascading in waves, her posture regal. The years had only made her stronger, more radiant. She walked with the poise of someone who had rebuilt herself from ashes, and she wasn't alone. A small figure stepped out beside her, a little boy, perhaps 5 years old, dressed smartly in a tiny suit. He clutched Isabella's hand but looked around the flashing cameras with wide, curious eyes. Ethan's heart nearly stopped. The boy's hair was dark like Isabella's, but his sharp features, his intense gaze, his very presence, there was no denying it. He looked exactly like Ethan did in his childhood photos. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Reporters' cameras clicked furiously. Ethan's mask of confidence cracked for the first time in years. He felt the ground shift beneath him as the truth screamed louder than any denial. He had a son. Inside the gala, Ethan couldn't focus. He watched from a distance as Isabella entered, heads turning wherever she walked. His boy clutched her hand and pointed excitedly at the chandeliers. his innocent joy in stark contrast to Ethan's storm of emotions. The CEO, who had once shouted "Get out," now found himself desperate to say, "Please, stay." But would she even let him speak? And if she did, could he ever make up for the years he had stolen? The moment Ethan Kane realized the boy was his son, his world collapsed in silence. The gala, the flashing lights, the investors, all of it blurred into the background. For a man who thrived on control, nothing had ever felt so uncontrollable. Isabella avoided his gaze. She carried herself with elegance, nodding politely to other guests, but her expression hardened whenever her eyes flickered toward him. It was as if years of pain and betrayal were hidden beneath that calm smile. Ethan's chest tightened. He had ruined everything? And now the living proof of his mistake stood right beside her, his child. The boy tugged at Isabella's gown. "Mommy, is that man looking at us?" His voice was innocent, curious. Ethan's heart broke. That was his son, speaking words he should have heard in a home, not in front of cameras, at a gala. Isabella bent down and whispered gently, "Don't worry about him, sweetheart." But Ethan couldn't stay silent. He crossed the floor, every step heavy with 6 years of regret. Guests turned, murmuring, sensing the tension. Isabella stiffened as he approached. "Isabella," he said softly, his voice stripped of its usual power. She didn't smile. "Mr. Kane's surprised to see me." He swallowed. "He's mine, isn't he?" Her jaw tightened. "Now you care to ask." The boy blinked up at him with the same storm-gray eyes Ethan saw in the mirror each morning. "Mommy, who is he?" Isabella hesitated. The question cut like a blade. She wanted to protect her son, shield him from the man who had once cast them aside. But lies would only hurt him later. "He's someone I used to know," she said firmly. Ethan's chest burned. Someone she used to know. That was what he had reduced himself to. The attempt at redemption later that evening. After the gala's announcements ended, Ethan waited near the exit. He watched Isabella guide their son toward the limousine, her hand protective on his shoulder. Desperation overwhelmed him. "Isabella, please," he called out. She stopped but didn't turn around. "Go back to your empire, Ethan. You made your choice 6 years ago." "I was wrong," he said, his voice trembling. "I was a coward. I thought I could shut the door and keep living. But when I saw our son, I realized what I lost." She turned sharply, eyes blazing. "Lost? You didn't lose. We lost. I raised him alone. I held him when he cried, when he was sick, when he asked why he didn't have a daddy like the other kids. Do you know what it's like to answer that question, Ethan?" He had no answer. Isabella shook her head. "You don't get to just walk in now and fix it with apologies." The boy tugged at her hand. "Mommy, is he my daddy?" Her eyes welled with tears. She crouched beside him, brushing his hair gently. "Sweetheart, that's complicated." Ethan dropped to his knees, no longer caring about pride, reputation, or the stares of others. "My name is Ethan," he said softly, meeting his son's curious gaze. "And yes, I'm your father. I should have been here for you. I wasn't, but if you let me, I want to be now." The boy tilted his head, studying him for a moment. Then, with innocent simplicity, he asked, "Will you play with me? Like other daddies do?" Ethan's throat closed. Tears blurred his vision. "I'll do whatever you want, son. Anything." The road forward, it wasn't easy. Isabella didn't trust him. Not yet. She allowed small steps, short visits, brief conversations, but every moment was a test. Ethan had to prove that he wasn't the same man who once shouted "Get out." He stumbled often. The first time he tried to make breakfast for his son, he burned the pancakes. The boy laughed, and Ethan laughed too, something he hadn't done in years. The second time, he attended the boys' school recital, sitting nervously in the front row. When his son spotted him in the crowd, his face lit up, and Ethan felt his heart swell with a pride that no business award had ever given him. Slowly, painfully, the walls between them began to crack. At night, Ethan replayed the past in his mind. The door he slammed, the words he shouted. Regret gnawed at him, but determination pushed him forward. He couldn't erase the years he had stolen, but he could fight for the years ahead. The moment of truth, one evening. As the sun set, Ethan walked Isabella and their son to the car after a long day at the park. The boy was tired, resting his head against his mother's shoulder. Isabella looked at Ethan, her eyes softer than before but still cautious. "You're trying," she admitted quietly. "I'll give you that. But I don't know if I can ever forgive you." Ethan nodded. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope one day you'll see I've changed. For him, for us." For a moment, silence hung between them. Then their son lifted his head, looking at Ethan. "Daddy," he whispered sleepily, the single word shattered every barrier. Ethan's eyes filled with tears as he gently took his son's tiny hand. "Yes, son." The boy smiled faintly. "Don't go away again." Ethan's voice broke as he whispered back, "Never, I promise." And in that fragile, precious moment, the man who once shouted, "Get out," finally found the courage to whisper the only words that truly mattered, "I'm here." Some wounds never heal until fate forces the truth to return. Ethan Kane thought power and money could erase the past. But when Isabella stepped from that limousine holding the hand of a child, with his very face the world he built began to crumble. 6 years of lies. 6 years of silence. Shattered in a single moment. Will Ethan finally face the consequences of the night he drove her away? Can he reclaim the family he once threw aside? Or has time already sealed his fate? This story isn't just about betrayal, it's about redemption, regret, and the power of truth that refuses to stay buried. Watch the full story unfold and witness the moment that left millions speechless. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more dramatic, life-changing stories.